everybody. My name is Jeremy Andrick, and I am a coordinator on the HIL Project. And what I'm going to be discussing today is a school performance profile. And what a school performance profile is a comprehensive understanding of the current state of your school. We use multiple buckets of data to truly figure out how we can make a significant impact on student learning. All of this is done within the context of the High Impact Leadership Project, otherwise known as the HIL Project, with our mission being one of developing the leadership necessary to achieve high integrity and fidelity implementation of evidence-based literacy practices. And within the HIL Project, we focus on the GELN literacy essentials. Our vision is for every student to achieve literacy success for every student. All means all. Our purpose today is to define and discuss the critical features of a school performance profile, share a practical description of how to create, develop, and implement a school performance profile, and share a concrete example of a school performance profile and what it may look like for your school. So as you can see here in this icon, that the intended outcome of the school performance profile is developing a true understanding of our school. So rather than seeing things separated and possibly not aligned, thinking of our classrooms as isolated silos, we want to break down those barriers and really start to merge and develop a shared language and common ideas about how we can move our school forward. And we can only do that if we have a true and collective understanding of the current state of our school, specifically beginning with student learning and student achievement. And why? Why do we want to do that? For clarity. We all want clarity when it comes to our roles. We all want clarity when it comes to how we can best support our students. That's what we're all in this for, is to truly support students and their learning. In addition, we also want to support the learning of adults. How can we as adults really start to work together and focus on our own behaviors to truly impact student learning? But we have to know what those actionable behaviors are in relation to actionable growth targets for students. We have to know where their strengths are, and we have to know where the learning is breaking down, and align our behaviors and our resources and our supports to support student learning. Student learning is the absolute foundation of every decision that we should be making subsequent to that. So as you can see in this graphic, while we're preparing to develop that school performance profile, there's also work to be done ahead of time. And so what we have in the HIL Project are 4 important high-impact leadership principles for school renewal. So in phase 1, we truly focus on the positive core and collective ownership. How do we orient ourselves towards the work in a positive fashion, where we are mission and vision focused, where we use a growth mindset, in contrast to a fixed mindset, where we focus things using an appreciative lens rather than a deficit-based, and where we truly focus on strengths. Where are our students knocking it out of the park? Where are they doing well? Which also helps us to understand maybe where there are some opportunities for growth for students. We also do that in a collective fashion. We distribute leadership. We empower teachers to own the school just like anybody else, to ensure that teacher voices are heard and lifted up. Shared responsibility, that all teachers develop ownership for the school, as well as administrators, that we're all in this together. Social trust as well. We all know that trust is extremely important in a working environment, and it's important that we want to develop that in our students as well. We want them to trust each other. We want them to trust us. We also want to do it in an interdependent fashion, where we all need each other, where nobody's left out of this process. So as we do that, we're really focusing on our why and our collective purpose for doing the work that we do, which is some of the most important work in our world today. So as I stated, phase 1 truly develops that focus and vision. Where are we headed? Why are we here together? Why are we in this school? What are we doing? And how are we going to truly impact our students? Because that's why we're here. It also develops that commitment and lift. We all know when we feel part of a team, and we feel part of a team that is working together, that all the parts are moving smoothly, it really starts to lift us up. We start to see beyond the horizon. We start to say, okay, this is our current state. What is our desired state, and how do we make it there? What are the steps that we have to take? How do we focus on student learning as a foundation and align everything to support that so that we are able to get to our desired state? So now it's time to talk about the school performance profile. So now all the pre-work has been done. We've developed that collective vision. We've worked on our mission, and we understand We understand where we want to go in the sense that we want all of our students to learn, but how are we going to get there? Because we know it is a multi-step process. We want to make sure that we don't try to cover everything at once, because if we try to cover everything at once, it makes our jobs very difficult, as we know. Sometimes we have to implement multiple initiatives. And how do we do that to support student learning if our heads or our minds are constantly thinking about different things? How do we merge that and truly look at our schools through multiple perspectives to truly focus on student learning? So let's talk about how that's done. So, like I said, in phase one, we laid the groundwork for phase two, which is the development of the school performance profile by focusing on the positive core and collective ownership. Phase two, now we're at the point where we're really going to dig deep, we're going to get dirty, and we're going to work on truly developing a performance profile that involves and incorporates multiple perspectives. So the hope is that all hands are on deck. This work may start with the school leadership team, but the hope is that the rest of the staff will start to participate and own and truly understand their importance in affecting student learning. So subsequent to the performance profile, we develop aligned growth targets, we monitor those growth targets, and then in phase five, we reflect and renew. So are we ready to move on? What is our next level of work? But first, we want to discuss the development of the school performance profile. So now that we have the positive core and collective ownership in place, we want to focus on evidence-based decision-making and organizational learning. We want to use that data in the evidence-based decision-making principle area to truly impact our organizational learning. What decisions will we make to move forward as an organization? So as you can see in this icon, so when you saw this the first time, you saw positive core and collective ownership circled. Now we're moving to the right of that, where now we're really focusing on those evidence-based decisions and that organizational learning. We want to look at multiple data streams so that it will impact how we are learning, how we are reflecting about our work. So now we're at the point, as you can see with the "You Are Here" icon, we're truly ready now to unearth those diamonds, unearth those golden nuggets of student learning and adult practice, and aligning those. But we have to develop a very clear picture of where our student learning is currently at the present time so that we can truly understand where we want to get them to. And why is that even important? It's important to develop a comprehensive school performance profile because we need to be grounded in an authentic assessment. How do we do so? We do it through appreciative inquiry. We do it through collaborative inquiry, and we do it through interdependent thinking. We want to make sure that we pull everyone together and that we're focusing on those strengths, because we all know that we are much more motivated to work if we approach it in a positive sense rather than if we're approaching it in a deficit-based sense. It is so easy to talk about what's missing. So how about we shift that thinking and really start to talk about what's working? What are we doing well that we can build upon to move forward? And so we all know this is easier said than done, we know. But before you can get where you want to go, you have to know exactly where you are. So if I want to travel somewhere I've never been before, I might GPS it and see how to get there. And I also might think, and that's my desired state, maybe I'm going on vacation, and I want to get there the quickest way possible, maybe. Or maybe I want to take the scenic route, or maybe I just want to take a different path altogether for whatever reason. But in terms of this, we know where we want to go, but there's multiple paths to get there. One school is going to look different from another school. It's going to look different from another school. We honor within the project, we honor the context. We honor what resources that you have at the building and what can you build off of to get to where you want to go. And I'm going to pause for a second to have you allow you to have a little bit of dialogue about what have you heard so far and what questions have arisen. I hope your discussion was fruitful. So now we're going to get into what does it actually look like. So let's get some concrete learning happening right now. So it is now time to develop the school performance profile. So What you'll see on the left are vital behaviors, and vital behaviors are, what do we want to see? What behaviors do we want to use as we develop a school performance profile? What do we consider critical behaviors within the HIL project when developing a school performance profile? First off, we delve deep into our student data and find specific aspects of literacy development where students need to grow to become proficient. We use state interim and classroom assessments, teacher observation, and student artifacts. So again, we want multiple perspectives of student learning. We don't want just one. We don't want to look at just MSTEP. We don't want to look at just NWEA. We want a full picture. And all of these pieces of data are used with the intention of moving towards a real-time understanding of our student learning. For adult practice within the classroom, you could use instructional rounds, what we call within the HIL Project literacy rounds. You could use walkthroughs, observations, interview teachers, interview students, conduct focus groups, which might look like grade level teams, look at artifacts, which may be student learning. Maybe you do some SurveyMonkey surveys within the building on a routine basis. Maybe your district does surveys. All of that data can be utilized to truly understand the current state. And what do we want to have as a result of that? Actionable student growth edges. And with those student growth edges, we determine what is highest leverage. And how do we do that? We do that as a team. I know that when I was a principal, that we had the school improvement plans. And so those could end up being 20, 30-page documents. And when I look back, I largely owned that process. And what I learned by moving to the HIL project is it needs to be more of a team-oriented approach. We all need to own that document rather than putting it on the shelf. So when we talk about the school performance profile, this is the foundation for that school improvement, or what we call within the project school renewal. And so it should be a living, breathing set of information that can be constantly referred to, updated, and nurtured to ensure that we are always on top of where our student growths are in terms of learning and where opportunities for growth are. So, because we all know that we don't have any time to waste with our students. So when we're developing the school performance profile and updating it, what do we ask ourselves? And in this current state of the world, we have to think about what's the fall going to look like in 2020? How will we assess students as they return? How will we get a picture? We won't have MSTEP data to assess to see where our trends are or where our student strengths are, student opportunities. So if we know that we don't have that important piece of information, how can we still develop a comprehensive picture even though we might not have pieces? How can we think of real-time assessment, our classroom assessments? What will we do? Student social emotional, how will we assess that as students return? How will we, knowing that we may have had several students that maybe experienced some trauma, maybe some parents that lost their jobs, and how do we prepare ourselves to support our students and our parents and our community and when we return? Literacy practice. What conditions will we need to prepare for? What literacy practices are in place and adaptable, which are not? So where were we at the end of the year in terms of our practice, what we'll be focusing on, and what will we focus on as we continue to move forward, and how can we assess that? Leadership. What were our leadership strengths? What are our shared leadership strengths? What can we put to use to support student learning? What other supports can we draw upon? And so when we're thinking of recovery, the importance of that piece is, we've all experienced some situations in the current world with the coronavirus pandemic, and also with the current opportunity to truly understand and how to bring an equitable learning environment and social environment for everyone in our country. What supports can we pull upon to support that work within our school, within the district, from the ISD or the Educational Service Agency, or from other sources? How can we align those as we move forward? So with the school performance profile, I want you to think about these 5 major, we can call them buckets, but I've touched on this before. So the first one is student academic status. The next one is student social, emotional behavior and health status, classroom practice, leadership and alignment of resources and support, coordination with other initiatives. We want to make sure that we don't have any conflicting notions of where to go next. We want to develop that really unified and coherent vision. And so what does that look like? So on the left, you'll see that. On the right, you're going to see, I believe it's Latin. I don't know what it says. But the point is that on the right, what you want to do is those are going to be your discoveries. When you looked at those assessments, the questions in the previous slide that guided your work, when you look at your information and what you have, what were your discoveries? What did you find? Because that is a true outcome of the school performance profiles. You want to figure out, what did you find? And with what you found, how is that going to influence your next level of decision making? So let's go into a concrete example. So as I talked about before, we want to make discoveries. We want to truly unearth and uncover what is happening with student learning first and foremost. Because when done well, the creation and development of the school performance profile enhances the understanding of the school's current state for all school personnel. Growth edges are uncovered, with the staff collectively taking the next step of prioritizing those growth edges. So let's talk about maybe a real situation in your school, maybe a situation that you've never seen. But I wanted to share a personal example of this process. So for our first example, let's talk about a discovery I made in the area of reading comprehension when I was a principal. I discovered, so I was in Colorado at the time, so we took the PARCC assessment, and according to that, in our most recent district assessments, our students in grade 2 and 3 were mostly at or above grade level in reading comprehension. But that was the big picture. I noticed that beginning in grade 4, reading comprehension scores started to show a progressive decline lasting through 5th grade. So it started to raise a question of like, okay, so we're at or above grade level, but there are some declines in 4th and 5th grade. So I began to think about this. After digging deeper, I and the team found that student performance was significantly higher when my students were being required to answer questions from a short 3 to 5 sentence passage than it was for questions that required comprehending a 3 to 5 paragraph passage. So the discovery also pertained to when the task required students to synthesize ideas from more than one text, whether they were comparing and contrasting, whether they were pro one article or anti the other in terms of having an opinion, citing text evidence, all those pieces. So questions that arose in my mind and my team's mind were, okay, why is this happening? Are we providing our students with opportunities to work with more than one text? Are we providing our students with opportunities to work with longer texts? Are there differences in how students are performing and learning across classrooms? What are our strengths in this area and how can we leverage them to support student learning? What resources may we be able to access? What else do we need to understand about this discovery? And then also just really thinking about those things. And then the next thought or the next avenue of analysis was, maybe I need to break this down by subgroups and or classrooms to truly see and get a true and authentic picture of what's going on. So digging deeper, we also found and discovered that students scored well on vocabulary questions overall, but just as with the decrease in overall comprehension scores between grades 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, where we started to see the decrease, we found a correlated decrease in student performance on vocabulary-related questions. So after review of the questions on the district assessments and related student work, we found that the students were experiencing challenges when the focus of the questions included the need for accurately understanding and applying 1, academic vocabulary, 2, words related to life experiences that maybe they never had the opportunity to live or see or experience for themselves, and also 2 to 3 syllable words. So as with before, I'm going to ask myself all of those questions. What's the highest leverage point? What is the actionable growth target that will assist our students and assist our teachers with moving forward with supporting that? So these are just 2 examples of what could be a number of discoveries about student learning. So once we make those discoveries about student learning, the team now has to determine what is the highest priority growth edge for student learning. So let's say, for example, with this one, we determine that we need to focus on vocabulary first and foremost, because if the students are having difficulty understanding what the sentences even mean or what the passages mean, comprehension is going to falter as well. And so by truly understanding where those student growths are, or strengths are, and where those opportunities for growth are, then our next step is to shift to the other areas of the school performance profile, such as the social, emotional, behavioral status, classroom practice, leadership and alignment of supports, and coordination with other initiatives. So this is truly critical when developing the school performance profile, because the more comprehensive the picture, the more clear the next best steps are and that rise to the surface. And all of this is done with a guiding principle of supporting the specific area of student learning. We want to make sure that we focus and really drill down into that and using the GEL and literacy essentials to support our work. So before I move on, I'm going to pause, and I want you and your team to just briefly discuss what you heard and any questions that may arise, or something that resonated with you as a result. As with before, I hope your discussion was fruitful and help to outline your understanding and help clarify some points. So what you'll see here, so in the beginning of the project, we all created these profile boards, which was a very visual and supportive process for understanding what the school performance profile could look like. Now, this is just one example. I know it's hard to read the words, but this is one example of how we developed our understanding of the school, looking at it from multiple perspectives. This could be done on a computer. It might be, when I was a principal, I had a big data wall where every child had a magnet for reading, writing, and math. It all just depends on what fits for your school and your team, and what will help outline your next steps. And the purpose of all of that is to get a complete and accurate picture of student and school performance, otherwise known as the current state, so that it will point our way forward. So if you think of an air traffic controller, so if these were all planes, I know they're stars, but if you were to imagine that they were all planes aligning, so what does the air traffic controller have to do? He has to determine who needs to be first, who needs to come next, so that he's able to develop that alignment so that everyone can land safely. So if we're thinking about student learning, how do we align everything that we are doing so that all of our energy is focused on student learning and adult practice to support that student learning? And why do we do that? And why do we want to develop these performance profiles? Because it guides the way forward. It illuminates possible targets for growth. They will rise to the surface as you have these collaborative dialogues around all the multiple data pieces, and with everything rooted in that student learning. It helps to profile our way out of the fog. Maybe we have hunches. Maybe we're like, okay, I think this is where we need to go, but we don't necessarily know. We know that our students are showing strengths here and opportunities for growth here, but our behaviors, our leadership supports, are we truly aligned to focus on the student learning growth targets so that we can move forward and support learning, so that we don't see the persistent gaps that we have seen in education? And like I said before, all means all for our students. And again, why is this important? We don't want to close our eyes and throw darts and hope that we find what we need to work on, because and how does that happen? It happens if we have an incomplete or inaccurate picture of current state. And that means that we could be shooting in all directions, many missing the mark. So for example, I love to plant flowers, but my specialty is roses. And so I truly focus on roses and figure out everything I need to know about roses to support their growth and their sustainability. So because I want to see them every summer, I want to see multiple blooms every summer. So if we think of our students, how do we support them and continue to support them? If we think of the adults in the building, how do we continue to support their learning, that we are all focused, that we can all use the same language and talk the same talk? And that we all know as educators as well, that we are very busy people. And we have finite time to make a significant impact on our students. And we can do that and really enhance that by aligning our focus. Because if we try to go in too many directions at once, we are not likely to grow very much at all. So if I wanted to try and grow 20 different flowers, I'm going to try and have to master 20 different needs in terms of water, soil, fertilizer. But if I just focus on one, I will be much more adept, much more cognizant, much more aware of what that one needs, so that I can then, once I get that growth edge, and once I get my clear understanding of how to grow roses, now maybe I can shift over to begonias. Maybe I can shift to something new. So when we're talking about student learning, let's go through and refer back to the previous example that I shared. Because what we want to do is find and prioritize just a few actionable growth targets to save time, energy, and resources. So again, we don't want to attack the kitchen sink. We don't want to say, okay, we need to focus on math and um, um, math over here. We want to focus on 5 different reading strategies over here. We're going to focus on 6 different writing strategies over here. We want to align our thoughts and our supports around one critical area that will leverage learning moving forward, because we need to dig deep to find actionable growth targets. So referring back to that previous example, so if growth targets are too general, we go back to spraying a wide path of arrows. But if we dig deep enough, we can find very specific growth edges that we can address with more precision of focus and targeted effort. So as with my previous example, we discovered that our 2nd to 5th grade students were strong overall at comprehension, but have opportunities to grow in the following areas. 1, understanding academic, life experience, and multisyllabic words that are necessary to complete a task with accuracy. We also found that answering questions requiring the comprehension of a 3 to 5 paragraph passage and comparing texts was also an area for growth as well. But we found also that our students were strong in answering shorter passages, so we have something to move forward with. We're clearly doing something well. So how do we leverage what we were doing well there to think about our next steps? So again, listening to this, I'm sure you're probably thinking, okay, what do we do next? We have a clear picture. We know where our student learning, we know where their strengths are, we know where their opportunities for growth are. So we're clear on that. So what do I do next? So as a principal and with my leadership team, we determined our highest priority growth edge, and we worked to align systems around that learning target. So with this one, I can just share that we decided to focus on vocabulary. So after we focus on vocabulary, now it's critical to shift the focus to understanding those other buckets: social, emotional, behavioral health, classroom supports, leadership alignment of supports, and other initiatives. So we have to think of now all of those supporting things that will enhance student learning. We need to think, okay, what are we going to do in these areas? How will we support classroom instruction? How will we align that with, so if we're focusing on those vocabulary needs, how do we focus classroom instruction to support those specific vocabulary needs? How do we focus principal and leadership support? How do we align other initiatives to ensure that we are not, again, throwing darts in a bunch of different directions? How do we collectively own this? How do we continue to have systemic dialogue so that we were all sharing that same vision and mission for the work, so that we're taking steps that make sense? How do we create practices throughout our building that aren't similar, because we're not looking for robotic teachers, but that have the same intended outcomes of enhancing that the understanding of vocabulary? So if that's our first and foremost priority growth target, okay, so then once we master that, we go through that first renewal cycle. Now we think about what's next. We started at our current state. We developed our clear and comprehensive picture. We determined as a team, okay, vocabulary is specifically multisyllabic, life experience, and academic is going to be our first focus. We're going to align leadership supports. We are going to align classroom instructional supports. And how that looks, again, is going to look different for each school, depending on your demographics, depending on resources that you may have, okay? So we work through, for example, we work through vocabulary. Maybe it takes a year, maybe it takes 6 months, maybe it takes longer, because you don't want to move forward until you truly see a student learning improving and classroom practice completely aligned with that, along with the other leadership supports, behavioral supports, other initiatives are aligned. Once that has happened, student learning has grown. Now what we're going to look at next is, okay, so now that we feel that students are starting to truly grow in that area, we're going to move on to, now we're going to work on longer passages. So let's see how our students are working, especially in grade 4 and 5, in terms of applying those vocabulary strategies and understanding longer passages. So beginning with, maybe we begin with 3 to 5 sentence paragraphs. Once they're able to handle that, maybe we move to 1 to 2 paragraph passages. Then once they master that, maybe we move to 3 to 5 paragraph passages. And then once they master that, maybe we start moving to two texts and working with there. So within there, you're going to have different steps that you take. Maybe you want to focus on citing text evidence. But again, this is all rooted in the dialogue and what the data is showing you. What is the picture that you are being presented with? And that's why it's so important that we get a comprehensive picture of everything, because if we find the student learning target, but we don't align instructional practice to it, or we don't align our professional learning to it, or we don't incorporate what existing initiatives, we could lead to quick burnout. And we want to make sure that teachers remain, and everybody within that building remains motivated and passionate about truly impacting student learning. And again, what will it provide for us? In a world that it can be cloudy at times, that can be foggy, that can have a lot going on, how are we able to put on these glasses of clarity and truly see the beauty in what our students are doing, what we are doing as adults to support them, and just orienting ourselves with such a clear, positively framed picture? How can we continue to move forward and empower ourselves as educators? And so what I talked about today, and you can see circled in red, are the phase 2 deliverable, which is the school performance profile, which leads to identified strengths and growth edges for students, classroom leadership support, and school conditions, and 2 to 3 priority student growth targets. So we want to develop that school performance profile so that we know which steps that we take to move forward. And of course, it needs to be rooted in multiple indicators. So again, I hope that I helped to clarify what a school performance profile is for you. You can always feel free to reach out to me, and I would be more than happy to answer questions. And again, I hope all is well. I hope you are doing well in this very interesting time in our world, and that we are all able to move forward with strength, positivity, and love. So everyone have a great day.